Infertile Korean CEO shocked to see strange triplets show up at his office with DNA reports. The DNA report landed on Gene Anderton's desk with a sound that shattered his carefully constructed world. Hello, beautiful people. Before we dive into this absolutely jaw-dropping story, let me know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. How are you doing today? And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are we waiting for? Hit that subscribe button because trust me, you won't want to miss how this unfolds. Now, let's get into it. Jin's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. The manila envelope sat there like a bomb, innocuous and deadly. His assistant had placed it on top of his morning briefing documents with a note that made his blood run cold. They're waiting in conference room B. The children insisted on seeing you. Children. The word tasted foreign in his mouth. Gene Anderton didn't do children. Couldn't do children. The medical diagnosis 6 years ago had been definitive, crushing, absolute. Azoospermia. 0 sperm count. Genetic condition. Irreversible. The doctor's clinical words had destroyed his engagement, his relationship with his traditional Korean family, and any hope of the legacy his father had demanded. He'd built Antech Solutions into a $3 billion empire to compensate for the heir he could never produce. Work became his child. Success became his bloodline. So why the hell was his hand trembling as he reached for that envelope? The security footage on his tablet showed conference room B. His breath caught. 3 children, 4, maybe 5 years old, sat in chairs too large for them, their legs swinging with innocent energy. 2 girls and a boy. The boy clutched a stuffed dragon. One girl traced patterns on the glass table. The other stared directly at the camera with eyes that looked familiar. Unsettlingly familiar. And standing behind them, protective and fierce, was a woman who made his heart stop. Sarah Mills. 5 years. It had been 5 years since he'd last seen her face. 5 years since the most reckless weekend of his carefully controlled life. 5 years since he'd let himself feel something other than the hollow ache of his diagnosis. She looked different, tired, thinner, with shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights and desperate struggles. But still beautiful in that understated way that had first caught his attention at the Tokyo conference. Still carrying herself with that peculiar mixture of vulnerability and steel. Jin's finger hovered over the intercom. His mind raced through possibilities, each more impossible than the last. This was a scam. Had to be. Some elaborate corporate espionage or blackmail scheme. Sarah had been a junior analyst at a rival firm when they'd met. Maybe she'd orchestrated everything, the chance encounter, the weekend that had felt like fate, the connection that had terrified him enough to disappear without explanation. But those children. He zoomed in on their faces. Korean features blended with Caucasian. The boy's nose. The girl's jawline. The other girl's eyes, oh God, those eyes, his mother's eyes staring out from a stranger's face. No. Impossible. The universe wasn't that cruel. Gene opened the envelope with hands that had negotiated $100 million deals without a tremor. Inside, 3 separate DNA analysis reports, each from a different certified laboratory. Each showing the same impossible result. Probability of paternity, 99.9%. Subject, Gene Anderton. Children, Lucy Mills, Ethan Mills, Lily Mills. The room tilted. Gene gripped the desk, his coffee forgotten, his morning briefing irrelevant, his entire reality fracturing along fault lines he didn't know existed. Triplets. His triplets? His phone buzzed. A text from his assistant, Ms. Mills says she'll wait as long as necessary. The children are getting restless. The little boy asked if his daddy is mean. What should I tell them? Daddy. The word hit him like a physical blow. Gene had grieved the loss of that word 6 years ago. Buried it alongside his father's disappointment and his own secret dreams. He'd accepted his fate with the stoic resignation his culture demanded. Now these strangers, these children, were casually resurrecting what should have remained dead. He pulled up Sarah's employment records through his private channels. The timeline emerged like evidence at a crime scene. She'd left her firm 5 years ago, 3 months after their Tokyo weekend. Dropped off the corporate radar entirely. No LinkedIn updates. No professional presence. Nothing until she'd appeared in his lobby this morning with 3 children and a folder full of impossible truths. The little girl with his mother's eyes, Lily, according to the report, pressed her hand against the glass table, and even through the security feed, Jean could see her smile. Pure, uncomplicated, trusting. When had anyone looked at him like that? His private line rang. Only 5 people had that number. The caller ID showed his VP of operations. Not now, Jean answered. Sir, there's a woman in conference room B claiming. I know. She has documentation. Security doesn't know whether to classify this as a threat or. I'll handle it. Jean ended the call. But would he? How did one handle the impossible? He stood, smoothing his Tom Ford suit, a reflexive gesture of armor. His reflection in the floor-to-ceiling windows showed a man who'd mastered control, perfectly styled black hair, expression neutral, posture radiating authority. None of it helped the chaos screaming through his mind. The walk to conference room B felt like miles instead of meters. His employees parted for him instinctively, their morning greetings dying on their lips when they saw his face. Jean Anderton's poker face was legendary in boardrooms across 3 continents. Apparently, it had limits. His hand touched the conference room door. Inside, 3 children who might be his, how, and a woman who'd haunted 5 years of carefully suppressed memories. And somewhere in that room, an answer that would either destroy him or give him the one thing he'd mourned as lost forever. Jean Anderton, CEO, billionaire, man of absolute control, had no idea which outcome terrified him more. He opened the door. 3 pairs of eyes locked onto Jean the moment he entered. The children didn't rush him. Didn't shout "Daddy," like some dramatic television reunion. They simply stared with the unnerving intensity only small children could manage, as if they could see straight through his $3,000 suit into the terrified man beneath. Sarah stood slowly, her hand instinctively moving to rest on the shoulder of the nearest child. Protective. The gesture spoke volumes. Jean. Her voice carried 5 years of complexity in 2 syllables. Not angry. Not pleading. Just exhausted. Thank you for seeing us. As if he'd had a choice. As if his entire world hadn't just imploded. Ms. Mills. The formality tasted bitter. He'd once whispered her name against her skin in a Tokyo hotel room, when he'd briefly allowed himself to be someone other than the perfect, controlled heir to a disappointed legacy. I've reviewed the documents. You understand this is impossible. I understand what you were told was impossible. Sarah's eyes held his. Reality seems to disagree. The little boy, Ethan, clutching his dragon, tilted his head. Are you really our daddy? Mommy said you didn't know about us. That you'd be surprised. Surprised. The understatement of the century. Jin's carefully prepared speech dissolved. He'd planned to handle this like a business negotiation, demand independent verification, discuss legal ramifications, maintain emotional distance. But those eyes, so earnest and curious, shattered his corporate armor. I don't. Jin's voice cracked. He cleared his throat. I don't understand how this is possible. Can I tell you what I understand? Sarah's voice softened, and for a moment, Jean saw the woman he'd met 5 years ago. The one who'd laughed at his terrible jokes. Who'd listened to his confessions about parental disappointment and impossible expectations. Who'd made him feel, for one reckless weekend, like he could be someone other than the man his diagnosis had sentenced him to be. I understand that 4.5 years ago, I gave birth to 3 miracles I never expected. I understand that I've raised them alone because I believed, you'd made it clear you didn't want complications in your life. The accusation landed like a physical blow. Because she was right. He'd ghosted her. Disappeared after Tokyo without explanation, terrified by how much he'd revealed, how vulnerable he'd let himself become. And I understand, Sarah continued, her voice strengthening, that 6 weeks ago, Ethan needed a blood transfusion after an accident. The hospital ran tests. Found genetic markers that started a chain of questions I couldn't answer with my medical history alone. Jin's breath caught. Is he all right? The question emerged before his brain engaged. Genuine concern for a child he'd met 30 seconds ago. A child who was, according to the DNA reports, his son. Something shifted in Sarah's expression. Softened. He's fine. Completely recovered. But the tests revealed complications. Potential genetic factors all 3 of them carry. The doctors needed a complete family medical history. Needed to know about their father's background. So you tracked me down for medical records. Jin's walls reconstructed themselves. This made sense. This was logical, transactional. Not emotional. No. Lucy, or was it Lily, spoke up, her voice small but clear. Mommy tracked you down because we asked about our daddy every single day and she was tired of crying when she thought we were asleep. Sarah's face flushed. Lucy. It's true. The other girl, Lily, then, nodded solemnly. We hear you, Mommy. When you're sad. If you're feeling the emotion building here, drop a comment and let me know what you think Jean should do. And if you're new here, subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Jean watched Sarah blink back tears, watched her struggle to maintain composure in front of her children, their children, and something cracked in his chest. The same something that had cracked in Tokyo when she'd asked about his dreams and actually waited for a real answer. He pulled out a chair. Sat down. Met 3 pairs of expectant eyes. Tell me about yourselves, he said quietly. Ethan's face lit up. I like dragons and dinosaurs and I can count to 100 in English and Korean because Mommy taught us and I'm really good at building blocks and... Ethan talks a lot, Lucy interrupted with the weary authority of an older sibling. Never mind that she was older by approximately 4 minutes, according to the birth records Jean had already pulled on his phone. I like reading and science and I'm going to be a doctor when I grow up so I can help people like the doctors who helped Ethan. That's admirable, Jean heard himself say. When had he last had a conversation like this? Had he ever? Lily remained quiet, studying him with those unnerving, familiar eyes. His mother had looked at him exactly like that, seeing not what he showed the world, but what he tried to hide. What about you? Jean asked gently. What do you like, Lily? Art, she said finally. And music. And I like watching people. You're scared right now. But not of us. Of yourself. Jin's heart stuttered. 4 years old, and she'd dissected him in seconds. Sarah made a small sound. Lily has always been perceptive. She gets it from her grandmother, Jean said without thinking. Then froze. His mother had died 2 years ago. Disappointed to the end that her only son would produce no heirs, carry on no legacy. She'd never known about Tokyo, about Sarah, about the one weekend Jean had allowed himself to pretend his diagnosis didn't define his entire future. What would she say if she could see these children? Her eyes looking back at her from Lily's face? Your mother? Sarah asked softly. She passed. 2 years ago. Jin's throat tightened. She was an artist. Pianist. Could read people like others read books. Lily smiled, small, tentative, but genuine. I wish I could have met her. The simple statement destroyed him. Jean stood abruptly, moved to the window, his back to the room. Soul sprawled below, his empire built on the ashes of impossible dreams. Antech Solutions had been his legacy when biological legacy was stolen from him. The diagnosis was definitive, he said to the glass, to the city, to the universe that seemed determined to unmake him. 6 years ago. Multiple specialists. Genetic condition. Zero probability of biological children. I know, Sarah's voice came from directly behind him. He hadn't heard her approach. You told me. In Tokyo. After the second bottle of wine, when you told me things you said you'd never told anyone. Gene closed his eyes. He remembered. God, he remembered. The way confession had spilled from him, his father's disappointment, his ex-fiancée's rejection when the diagnosis came, the hollow certainty that he'd failed at the most basic biological imperative. Sarah had listened. Hadn't offered platitudes or false hope. Just listened. And then, in the morning, Gene had panicked. Run. Disappeared back into his controlled life before the feelings growing in his chest could take root. I'm sorry, he whispered. For leaving. For not. We're not here for apologies. Sarah's hand touched his arm, feather-light. We're here because those 3 children deserve to know their father. And because I can't do this alone anymore. Gene turned. Sarah stood close enough that he could see the silver threads in her dark blonde hair, the fine lines around her eyes that spoke of years of struggle. She'd been beautiful in Tokyo, carefree, laughing, full of possibility. She was breathtaking now, a warrior who'd fought battles he couldn't imagine. I don't know how to be a father, Gene admitted. I never thought I'd have the chance to learn. Neither did I expect to be a mother of triplets at 30. Sarah's smile was wry, tired, real. But we figure it out. One impossible day at a time. Behind them, a crash. They spun. Ethan had knocked over a water pitcher reaching for his dragon. Water spread across the conference table. Lucy was already grabbing napkins, efficient and motherly. Lily had rescued the DNA reports, holding them above the spreading puddle. Sorry. Ethan's face crumpled. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Gene moved on instinct. Knelt beside the boy. Accidents happen. It's just water. Nothing important was damaged. Except possibly my entire understanding of my life, he thought. Ethan's lower lip trembled. Mommy says I need to be more careful. That we can't afford to replace things. The words hit Gene like a sledgehammer. Can't afford. Sarah had worked at a competitive firm 5 years ago, before she'd gotten pregnant with triplets and apparently sacrificed her career. How have you been managing? Gene asked Sarah, still kneeling in the puddle. Financially. The medical care alone for 3 children. We manage. Sarah's voice went tight. Proud. I freelance. Consulting work I can do from home. It's enough. It clearly wasn't enough. Gene could read balance sheets and budgets in his sleep. Could see the wear in Sarah's clothes, the careful way she'd dressed the children in clean but obviously second-hand outfits for this meeting. His children had been struggling while he built empires. His children. The reality settled over him like a weight and a revelation simultaneously. I'll need independent DNA verification, he said, rising. Not because I don't believe you. Because I need to understand how this is possible. I'll arrange appointments with the best genetic specialists in Seoul. Full medical workups for all 3 children. Complete family medical history integration. Gene. And you'll stay in Seoul while we sort this out. All of you. I'll arrange accommodations. We're not your charity case. Sarah's spine straightened. The same fierce independence he'd admired in Tokyo. No, Gene agreed quietly. You're the mother of my children. And they're my responsibility. Let me do this. Please. The word felt foreign. Gene Anderton didn't plead. Didn't ask. He commanded, negotiated, dominated. But these eyes, 4 pairs now, watching him with varying degrees of hope and uncertainty, required a different man. Maybe the man he'd glimpsed being, for one weekend in Tokyo. Maybe the man he'd been too afraid to become. Okay, Sarah said finally. But Gene? We're not here to disrupt your life. I just thought, they deserve to know you. To have the choice you and I never had. Choice. Gene had built his entire life around the choices stolen by his diagnosis. Now, apparently, the universe was offering them back. He looked at his children, and they were his, he could feel it in his bones despite the medical impossibility, and made a choice. Clear my schedule for the rest of the day, he told his assistant through the intercom. Cancel everything. Sir, you have the board meeting at 2. Cancel it. 3 small faces lit up with cautious joy. Gene had no idea what he was doing. No roadmap for this territory. But for the first time in 6 years, the hollow ache in his chest felt less like an ending. And more like a beginning. The pediatric genetics specialist's office occupied the top floor of Seoul's most prestigious medical center, a building Gene had personally donated $5 million to 3 years ago. Dr. Park had been briefed on the sensitivity of the situation. Discretion guaranteed. Results expedited. What Gene hadn't anticipated was running into his ex-fiancée in the elevator. Una Corleone stood in designer perfection, her shock of recognition quickly masked by the social grace that had made her Seoul's most eligible bachelorette after their engagement imploded. Her eyes flickered from Gene to Sarah to the 3 children holding Sarah's hands. The elevator seemed to shrink. Gene. Una's smile was surgical precision. What an unexpected surprise. Una. He positioned himself subtly between her and his family. When had he started thinking of them that way? I didn't know you were involved with the medical center. Board member. As of last month. Her gaze dissected Sarah with the efficiency of a corporate raider evaluating assets. And you are? Leaving, Sarah said firmly, but Lucy was already speaking. We're getting tests done. To see if we have any allergies, Sarah interrupted smoothly, her hand tightening on Lucy's shoulder. Routine checkup. We're visiting from the States. Una's perfectly shaped eyebrow arched. She looked at Gene. Really looked at him. At the way he stood protectively closer to Sarah. At the 3 children who had Korean features blended with Caucasian. At Lily, who had his mother's unmistakable eyes. How domestic, Una said, her voice like silk over razors. Gene, I wasn't aware you were seeing anyone. The tabloids will be fascinated. It was a threat dressed as observation. Una sat on the board of 2 media conglomerates. 1 phone call and this would be headline news across Asia. There's nothing to be fascinated by, Gene said evenly. I'm helping an old friend with medical referrals. Of course. Una's smile never wavered. How charitable. Though I must say, the children bear a striking resemblance to your mother. God rest her soul. Don't you think? The elevator doors opened. 15th floor. Dr. Park's office. Excuse us, Gene said, guiding Sarah and the children out. But as the doors closed, he caught Una's expression. Calculating. Dangerous. She knew. Or suspected enough to make his life complicated. Dr. Park's examination room was designed to be child-friendly, colorful murals, gentle lighting, toys scattered strategically. The children were whisked away by a kind nurse for fun tests while Gene and Sarah met with the doctor privately. Dr. Park laid out the preliminary results on his tablet. The paternity is conclusive. 99.9% certainty across all 3 children. Mr. Anderton, these are biologically yours. Jin's hands gripped the armrests. Hearing it officially, clinically stated, made it undeniable. But that's impossible, he said. 6 years ago, I was diagnosed with azoospermia. Genetic condition. Complete absence of sperm. Multiple specialists confirmed. Yes, I've reviewed your medical history. Dr. Park's expression shifted. Uncomfortable. Mr. Anderton, I need to ask you something sensitive. Who ordered your original diagnostic tests? My father. He'd arranged the full genetic screening after my engagement. Standard practice in families like ours before. Gene stopped. Why? Dr. Park pulled up older files. Your original diagnosis came from Dr. Choi's clinic. Dr. Choi retired 4 years ago under circumstances. There were allegations of falsified results. Kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. The investigation was quietly settled. The room tilted. What are you saying? Sarah leaned forward. I'm saying I'd like to run current fertility tests. Because if these children are biologically Mr. Anderton's, and they absolutely are, then either we're looking at a medical miracle, or the original diagnosis was incorrect. Jean couldn't breathe. 6 years. 6 years of grief, of reconstructing his entire identity around being infertile. His engagement had ended. His father had looked at him with such disappointment before his death. His mother had died thinking the family line ended with him. All possibly based on a lie? My father chose Dr. Choi, Jean said slowly, pieces clicking into place with horrifying clarity. They were college friends. My father was traditional. Obsessed with legacy, with genetic perfection. When he learned I was considering marrying Yuna, whose family had a history of genetic disorders, he insisted on the screening. And when the results came back showing you were infertile, Sarah said quietly, understanding dawning in her eyes, the engagement ended. You were free of an arrangement your father had orchestrated. But I loved, Jean stopped. Had he loved Yuna? Or had he loved the idea of finally pleasing his father? Dr. Park cleared his throat. I can have preliminary results on current fertility testing within 2 hours. But Mr. Anderton, regardless of the past, the present is clear. You have 3 healthy children who carry genetic markers that require monitoring. I need complete family medical histories from both sides. Of course, Sarah said. Whatever they need. A knock on the door. The nurse entered, her expression troubled. Dr. Park? There's a situation. A woman claiming to be the children's legal guardian is demanding we stop all tests immediately. She's threatening legal action. Jin's blood ran cold. What woman? She said her name is Yuna Corleone. She's accompanied by attorneys and, the nurse hesitated, someone from Child Protective Services. Sarah's face went white. She can't, I'm their mother. She has no right. Jean was already moving, Sarah close behind. They burst into the waiting area to find Yuna holding court with 2 lawyers and a severe-looking woman with a CPS badge. The children huddled together on a couch, Ethan clutching his dragon, both girls pressing close to their brother. Terrified. What the hell is this? Jin's voice could have frozen fire. Yuna turned, her expression sympathetic concern for the benefit of witnesses. Jean, I'm sorry, but I had to act. This woman, she gestured at Sarah, has clearly been running some kind of scam. Fake DNA results, invented children, trying to trap you into financial obligations. Those tests are legitimate, Jean said, his control fracturing. Are they? How convenient that she appears with children right after your mother's death, when you inherited everything. When you're one of the wealthiest men in Seoul. Yuna looked at the CPS worker. I'm concerned these children are being exploited. Used as pawns in a con game. They deserve better protection. Sarah moved toward her children, but one of the lawyers stepped in her path. Ms. Mills, until we verify your claims and ensure these children's welfare, we need to ask you to. To what? Sarah's voice shook with fury and fear. Step away from my children? You have no authority. Actually, the CPS worker said, if there's credible concern about exploitation or fraud, we can temporarily intervene pending investigation. This is getting intense. Drop a comment with what you think Jean should do. And if you're not subscribed, now's the time, you won't believe where this goes next. Jean looked at his children, because they were his, DNA confirmed, undeniable, and saw Lucy trying not to cry, Ethan's confusion, Lily's hand reaching toward him in silent plea. Something crystallized. Hard and absolute. Everyone stop. Jin's voice carried the authority of 1,000 boardroom victories. Ms. Corleone, I appreciate your concern. But it's misplaced and unwelcome. Jean, I'm trying to protect you. No, you're trying to control me. Like you did during our engagement. Like my father did. He turned to the CPS worker. These children are mine. Biologically confirmed by Dr. Park, one of Asia's leading genetic specialists. Ms. Mills is their mother. There is no fraud, no exploitation, no scam. Then why hide them? Yuna pressed. Why secret meetings in medical offices? Why has no one heard about these children until today? Because I didn't know about them until today. Jin's control shattered. Because I was told I was infertile. Because I disappeared from Sarah's life 5 years ago like a coward instead of facing what I felt. Because I've wasted 5 years while she raised our children alone. The silence that followed was deafening. Yuna's mask slipped. Just for a moment, Jean saw real hurt beneath the calculation. You felt something? For her? In how long, Jean? You knew me for 3 years and never. I know, Jean said quietly. I'm sorry. But this isn't about us anymore. He walked past the lawyers, past the CPS worker, and knelt in front of his children. I'm sorry you're scared, he said. But I promise you, no one is taking you away from your mother. No one is hurting our family. Okay? Lily's small hand touched his face. You said our family. Yes, Jean realized. I did. Sarah was beside him suddenly, her hand on his shoulder. United front. When had that happened? Mr. Anderton, one of the lawyers started, Ms. Corleone has legitimate concerns about. Ms. Corleone has no standing here. None. If she persists, I'll have security escort her out and file harassment charges. Jean stood, keeping himself between Yuna and his children. The only people with any say in these children's lives are their mother and me. The CPS worker looked between them, her expression softening slightly. I can see this as a family matter, not a welfare concern. But Mr. Anderton, Ms. Mills, I'll need to file a report. Given the unusual circumstances. High-profile parent, questions about prior knowledge, substantial wealth disparities. There will be follow-up. That's fine, Sarah said, her voice steady despite her pale face. We have nothing to hide. Yuna gathered her composure like armor. Jean, you're making a mistake. You don't know this woman. 5 years ago means nothing. She could be after your money, your company. 5 years ago, I told her things I never told you in 3 years, Jean said. And she spent 5 years raising 3 children alone rather than exploiting my name or wealth. What does that tell you? Yuna's eyes glistened. For a moment, she was the woman he'd almost married. Vulnerable beneath the perfection. It tells me you've already chosen, she said softly. Then louder, I hope you're right about them, Jean. Because if you're wrong, you'll lose everything. She left, her lawyers following. The threat lingered like smoke. Dr. Park emerged from his office, tension written across his face. Is it safe to continue the examinations? Jean looked at Sarah. Found her looking back at him. An entire conversation in a glance. Are we doing this? Really committing? Facing whatever comes together? He nodded. She nodded back. Yes, Jean said. Continue everything. Full genetic workups. Family medical histories. And Dr. Park? Run those fertility tests on me. I need to know the truth. Daddy? Ethan's small voice. Can my dragon get tested too? He's family. The tension broke. Jean smiled, actually smiled, something that felt foreign and wonderful. Absolutely. Family is family. As they returned to the examination rooms, Sarah's hand brushed his. Deliberately. A choice. Jean laced his fingers through hers. He'd spent 6 years believing he was broken. Building walls against hope. Now those walls were rubble, and standing in the ruins were 3 impossible children and a woman who'd somehow made the impossible real. But as they passed a window overlooking Seoul, Jean saw his reflection. Saw the target he'd just painted on all of them. Una wouldn't let this go. The tabloids would devour this story. His board would have questions. Competitors would sense vulnerability. And somewhere in the medical mysteries and family secrets, there were answers that would either complete him or destroy him. He squeezed Sarah's hand tighter. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. He just hoped that would be enough. The penthouse suite Jean arranged overlooked the Han River, 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, and enough space that Sarah couldn't possibly argue it was excessive. She argued anyway. Jean, this is a 5-star hotel. We can't stay here. Do you know what this costs per night? I own the hotel. He set down the last of their hastily packed bags. The children had already discovered the floor-to-ceiling windows and were pressed against the glass, marveling at the city lights. Consider it a company apartment. You don't have company apartments in luxury hotels. I do now. Their eyes met. Sarah's frustration warred with exhaustion, and beneath both, something else. Something that had flickered between them since that moment in the hospital when their hands had intertwined. Why are you doing this? She asked quietly. Because 4 hours ago I discovered I'm a father. Jean loosened his tie, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Because you've been doing this alone for 5 years. Because I owe you. You don't owe me anything. Because I want to, he finished. Is that allowed? Sarah's breath caught. In the window's reflection, Jean saw her expression shift, walls lowering, hope creeping in. Mommy. There's a bathtub big enough for swimming. Lucy's shout broke the moment. Please don't actually swim in it, Sarah called back, but her lips curved. They've never seen anything like this. Neither have I, Jean admitted. I've never. I don't know how to do this. The parent thing. I keep waiting to make some catastrophic mistake. You will, Sarah said with the weary wisdom of experience. Multiple mistakes. Daily. But you show up anyway. That's the job. Before Jean could respond, his phone erupted. 23 missed calls. 47 messages. His VP, his board members, his PR team, his lawyers. News had leaked. The headline screamed from his screen, billionaire bachelor Jean Anderton's secret triplets, love child scandal or con artist trap? Damn it, Jean breathed. Sarah looked over his shoulder. Went very still. That was fast. Una. Jean pulled up the article. Photos of them at the medical center. Speculation about Sarah's background, insinuations about gold digging, questions about the children's legitimacy. His company's stock price was already fluctuating. But worse, far worse, was the sidebar article. Mystery mother, who is Sarah Mills? They'd dug into her past. Her abrupt career departure 5 years ago. Her lack of social media presence. Her convenient reappearance just months after Jin's mother's death and his inheritance of the family fortune. The implication was clear, calculated fraud. This is going to get ugly, Jean said. It already is ugly. Sarah's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face drained of color. Oh God. What? My sister. She's seen the news. Jean, she's filing for emergency custody of the children. The world tilted again. Your sister? Why would? Because I haven't spoken to her in 4 years. Sarah sank onto the couch, trembling. Because when I got pregnant, when I told my family I was keeping the babies even though the father had disappeared, she said I was being selfish. That I couldn't provide properly for 3 children alone. We had a massive fight and I cut contact. Jean sat beside her, his mind racing through legal implications. She can't just file for custody. She's married to a family court judge in California. She has resources, connections, a stable 2-parent home. And now with this media firestorm, with questions about my judgment, my decisions. Sarah's voice broke. She always said I was reckless. That I made emotional choices without thinking about consequences. Was finding me an emotional choice? Sarah looked at him. Really looked at him. 5 years ago? Spending that weekend with you was the most reckless thing I'd ever done. I knew you were way out of my league. Knew it was probably just a weekend. But you were so real when you let your guard down. So honest about your pain. Jean remembered. The hotel bar in Tokyo. International Tech Conference. He'd been there to represent Anteka's expansion. She'd been attending for her firm. They'd both reached for the last pour of a specific whiskey. She'd smiled and said, we could share it, or fight for it. Your choice. He'd chosen to share. Then to talk. Then to trust her with truths he'd told no one. I shouldn't have left the way I did, Jean said. I was a coward. You were grieving. Sarah's hand covered his. I understood that. What I didn't understand was being pregnant 3 months later with triplets when the father had vanished without a trace. You tried to find me? Of course I tried. But Gene Anderton, the billionaire CEO, was impossible to reach for Sarah Mills, the junior analyst. Your assistant screened me out. Your lawyers sent cease and desist letters when I persisted. Her laugh was bitter. I gave up after my 3rd month. Decided you'd made your choice clear. Guilt crashed over Jean. While Sarah had been pregnant, struggling, trying to reach him, he'd been buried in work, avoiding anything that reminded him of Tokyo. Of feelings. Of the impossible hope she'd briefly kindled. If you're feeling this, drop a comment. What would you do in Jin's position? And make sure you're subscribed, this story gets even more intense. I'll fight your sister, Jean said. Best lawyers. Whatever it takes. With what argument? That you've known about your children for 12 hours? Sarah pulled her hand away. Jean, I appreciate everything you're doing, but maybe she's right. Maybe the kids would be better off with stability, with... No. Jin's voice cut like steel. Don't give up on them. On us. Us? Sarah's eyes widened. Jean, there is no us. There's you being generous to the mother of your children. That's not. The hotel door burst open. Jin's security team, followed by his assistant and his VP of operations, James Hagan. Sir, we have a situation, James said, barely glancing at Sarah. Emergency board meeting called for tomorrow morning. They're demanding answers about the paternity claims, the media exposure, potential corporate liability. I'll handle it. There's more. Someone leaked the preliminary DNA results to the press. Full genetic details. The children's medical information. It's everywhere. Jean stood slowly, rage building. That's a HIPAA violation. Dr. Park would never. It wasn't Dr. Park. James pulled up a tablet. The leak came from inside Antec. Someone accessed your private files from your office computer. 40 minutes ago. Someone on his own team. Corporate espionage or personal betrayal? Who had access? That's the problem. The breach used your executive security credentials. Your fingerprint, your password. As far as the system knows, you leaked it yourself. Sarah was on her feet. Someone setting you up. Una, Jean said immediately. She has connections throughout Seoul's corporate world. She could have. Ms. Corleone was having dinner with the mayor when the breach occurred, James interrupted. Very public, very documented. She has an alibi. Then who? Jin's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered on speaker. Mr. Anderton. The voice was distorted, filtered through digital modification. You should have stayed broken. Should have accepted what you were told. Now you've created problems for people who prefer their secrets buried. Who is this? Someone who benefited from your infertility diagnosis. Someone who's invested considerable resources in maintaining certain family structures. The children are a complication. Ms. Mills is a complication. This fairy tale reunion you're constructing? It threatens very carefully laid plans. Sarah grabbed Jin's arm. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Make the children go away. Pay off Ms. Mills. Return to your controlled, solitary life. Or the next leak won't be medical records. It will be evidence of fraud, of Ms. Mills's desperation, of a conspiracy to trap you. Evidence that will hold up in court. Fabricated evidence, Jean said. Does it matter? You're a public figure now. Your company's stock is already dropping. Your board is questioning your judgment. How long before investors lose confidence? Before partnerships dissolve? Before Antech Solutions becomes a cautionary tale about billionaires and their bastards? The line went dead. Silence filled the penthouse. Then, from the bedroom, a small voice, Daddy? Ethan stood in the doorway, dragon clutched tight, tears streaming down his face. That man said we have to go away. That we're bastards. He'd heard everything. Jean was across the room in seconds, kneeling, gathering the boy into his arms. No. Listen to me. You're not going anywhere. You're my son. You and your sisters. Nothing anyone says changes that. But the mean man is wrong. And a coward for hiding behind a fake voice. Jean looked up at Sarah, at James, at his security team. Find out who made that call. Trace it. I don't care what it costs. Sir, James hesitated. Maybe we should consider. Consider what? Abandoning my children? Letting whoever this is win? Jin's voice could have cut diamond. No. We fight. Sarah knelt beside them, her hand on Ethan's back. Baby, why don't you go check on your sisters? Make sure they're okay? Ethan nodded, wiping his nose on Jin's Tom Ford suit jacket without apology. Jean didn't even care. When the boy left, Sarah turned to Jean. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world is too big, too exposed. My kids can't handle this kind of attention, these kinds of threats. Our kids, Jean corrected. And they're stronger than you think. Ethan just heard someone call him a bastard and threaten his family. He came to me. To his father. That means something. It means he's 4 and doesn't understand the danger. It means he trusts me. Jean stood, frustrated. Sarah, I know I have no right to ask for your trust. I know I abandoned you. But I'm here now. Let me protect you. All of you. By doing what? Throwing money at the problem? Hiring lawyers and security teams? Sarah's eyes blazed. Jean, I've kept them safe for 5 years without your resources. Maybe the safest thing is to disappear again. Let you deny paternity, let the story die. Over my dead body. The words hung between them. Absolute. Non-negotiable. Sarah stared at him. 12 hours ago, you didn't know they existed. 12 hours ago, I was half alive. Going through motions. Building empires to fill the void where family should be. Jean stepped closer. You gave me back something I thought was dead. Hope. Purpose. The chance to be someone other than the broken heir who disappointed everyone. You're not broken. I felt broken. For 6 years. And in one day, you've made me feel whole. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away a tear she didn't know she'd shed. I know this is fast. I know I have no right to ask for anything. But please. Don't run. Don't take them away before I've had a chance to. To what? Sarah whispered. To know them. To be their father. To prove I'm not the coward who ran in Tokyo. The air between them crackled. Sarah's hand came up to cover his, still cradling her face. For a moment, Jean thought she might kiss him. Wanted her to kiss him with an intensity that shocked him. But footsteps interrupted. Security sweeping the suite. James still hovering with his tablet of corporate emergencies. The real world intruding on a moment too fragile to survive exposure. Sarah stepped back. I need to call my sister. Try to explain before she files anything official. Use my lawyers. Jean. Sarah's smile was sad, exhausted. You can't fix everything with resources and power. Some things require trust. Time. Things we don't have. She disappeared into one of the bedrooms, phone in hand. James approached cautiously. Sir, the board meeting. You need a strategy. A narrative. The shareholders are spooked. Tell them the truth, Jean said. I have 3 children I didn't know about. I'm handling it. Anteca's operations are unchanged. With respect, sir, your judgment is being questioned. Some board members are suggesting a temporary leave of absence. Until the situation stabilizes. Let them try. Jean pulled out his own phone. Time to call in favors, activate his own networks. I built Antec from nothing. They want to push me out over personal matters? We'll see how that plays out. But as he started making calls, Jean caught his reflection in the darkened window. Saw himself clearly for the first time in hours. He was terrified. Not of corporate challenges or media scrutiny. Of the fragile, impossible thing taking root in his chest. A family. His family. And someone powerful enough to falsify medical records, breach corporate security, and threaten with confidence, wanted to destroy it before it could fully form. The question was why? What secrets had his father buried that were worth protecting with threats and sabotage? In the bedroom, he could hear Sarah's voice, low and urgent, pleading with her sister. The children's voices asking questions she was trying to answer with reassuring lies. Jean looked at James. Find Dr. Choi. The doctor who gave me the false diagnosis. I don't care if he's retired, in hiding, or dead. Find him. He's the key to all of this. Sir, if this goes deeper than medical fraud, then we dig until we find the truth. Jin's jaw set. Someone bet on me staying broken. Staying alone. They bet wrong. He just hoped that defiance wouldn't cost him everything he'd just discovered. Including the woman in the next room, who'd given him 3 miracles and was already planning her escape. Dr. Choi wasn't in hiding. He was in a memory care facility in Busan, his mind ravaged by early-onset Alzheimer's. But his records told the story his fading memory couldn't. Jean stood in the administrator's office at 3 a.m., Sarah beside him. They'd left the children with his most trusted security team and driven 2 hours south after James had located the retired doctor. Sleep could wait. Answers couldn't. Dr. Choi kept duplicate files, the administrator explained, sliding a worn folder across the desk. Before his diagnosis, he told us if anyone came asking about the Anderton case, to provide these. He said he'd carried the guilt long enough. Jean opened the folder with shaking hands. Inside, his original test results. Real ones. Not the falsified reports he'd been shown 6 years ago. Sperm count, normal. Fertility, uncompromised. Genetic screening, no hereditary conditions detected. The world stopped. I don't understand, Jean whispered. He told me, my father showed me the results. Sarah was reading over his shoulder. She pulled out another document. A bank transfer receipt. $2 million, deposited into Dr. Choi's account 6 years ago. Paid by Jin's father. Oh my God, Sarah breathed. Jean, your father, he paid to have you diagnosed as infertile? The administrator nodded grimly. Dr. Choi's notes indicate he was instructed to deliver a false diagnosis. He was told it was for the family's good. That Mr. Anderton's son needed to be redirected from an unsuitable engagement. Yuna. Jin's voice came from somewhere distant. My father didn't approve of her family's medical history. He wanted the engagement ended but needed a reason that would break me enough to comply. 6 years. 6 years of believing he was broken. Of grieving a future that was never actually lost. Of avoiding relationships, possibilities, hope. All based on a lie his own father had orchestrated. There's more, the administrator said quietly. She pulled out a final document. A letter, written in Dr. Choi's deteriorating hand. He wrote this 2 years ago, before the Alzheimer's progressed. He was planning to come forward, but... Jean read aloud, his voice breaking. To Jean Anderton, I have carried the weight of your father's deception for too long. He believed he was protecting the family legacy from what he called genetic contamination. He was willing to destroy your happiness, your sense of self, to maintain control. I participated in this cruelty for money, and it has haunted me every day since. You were never infertile. You were never broken. You were simply the son of a man who valued legacy over love. I hope someday you can forgive an old coward who valued money over truth. Dr. Choi. Silence filled the office. Sarah's hand found Jin's. Held tight. Your father did this, she said softly. Your own father. Jean couldn't speak. Couldn't process. His father had been demanding, traditional, harsh. But this level of manipulation, of calculated cruelty. Sir, James appeared in the doorway, phone in hand. His expression was grave. The threatening call. We traced it. You need to see this. He held up the phone. The number had been routed through multiple proxies, but the origin point was clear. Jin's family estate. His late father's private office, which had been sealed since his death 2 years ago. That's impossible, Jean said. No one has access to that office. I kept it locked. Someone has a key, James said. And they've been using your father's old equipment. His secure lines. Sir, whoever is threatening you has intimate knowledge of your family. They're operating from inside your father's world. Sarah stood abruptly. We need to get back to the children. Now. She was right. The pieces were connecting in terrifying ways. His father's deception. Someone continuing his work. Threats coming from the family estate. Jin's phone buzzed. A text from his head of security. Intruder alert at hotel. Children secure but someone attempted access to penthouse suite. Suspect fled. Reviewing footage now. Move, Jean commanded. They ran. The drive back to Seoul was a blur of speed and terror. Jin's mind raced faster than the car. His father had lied. Someone was continuing whatever plan that lie had been part of. And now his children were in danger. Their children. He glanced at Sarah, pale and tense in the passenger seat. I'm sorry. For all of this. If I'd known. You couldn't have known. But her voice shook. Jean, what if this is bigger than we thought? What if your father had reasons we don't understand yet? No reason justifies what he did. I'm not defending him. I'm saying, what if the infertility lie was just one piece of something larger? What if whoever is threatening us is protecting something your father started? Jin's hands tightened on the wheel. She was right. This felt orchestrated. Planned across years. But for what purpose? His phone rang. The distorted voice again. You found Dr. Choi's confession. Touching. But it changes nothing. Who are you? Jean demanded. Someone who understood your father's vision. Who helped him build safeguards to protect what matters. You were never supposed to have children, Jean. Never supposed to continue the bloodline. Your discovery of these mistakes threatens everything. They're not mistakes. They're my children. They're evidence of your father's one failure. He didn't anticipate Tokyo. Didn't know you'd have one last reckless moment before accepting your fate. The voice paused. But it's not too late. A tragic accident. A gas leak in a hotel penthouse. The American woman and her children, gone. You, the grieving almost father, vindicated when investigation reveals she was mentally unstable, fabricated everything. Sarah grabbed the phone. You touch my children and I will burn your world down. I don't care who you are or what you think you're protecting. A laugh. Cold. Amused. Ms. Mills. So fierce. I can see why he chose you for his one moment of weakness. But maternal instinct won't save them. Neither will his money. The wheels are already in motion. The line went dead. Jin's phone immediately rang again. His security chief. Sir, we've identified the intruder from the hotel footage. You need to see this. It's impossible. Show me. James pulled up the security image on his tablet from the passenger seat. Jin's blood turned to ice. The woman caught on camera, attempting to access the penthouse where his children slept, was someone he recognized instantly. His mother. Or rather, someone who looked exactly like his mother. Same face, same build, same distinctive birthmark on her left hand. But his mother had been dead for 2 years. What the hell is this? Jean breathed. Sarah leaned over, saw the image, and gasped. Jean, that woman looks exactly like Lily. Like you said your mother looked. The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. His father's obsession with genetic legacy. The falsified infertility diagnosis. The threats to make his children go away. Someone operating from his father's sealed office. And now a woman who looked like his dead mother, targeting his children who carried her genes. James, Jean said, his voice deadly calm. Unseal my father's office. All of it. Every file, every record, every secret he kept. I want to know what he was really protecting. Sir, if your father was involved in something, then I'm ending it. Tonight. What is Jin's father hiding? Comment your theories below. And subscribe, next part is going to blow your mind. The family estate loomed against the Seoul skyline, dark, imposing, filled with ghosts. Jean hadn't set foot here since his mother's funeral. Now he stood in his father's sealed office, Sarah beside him, while James and the security team swept the premises. The office was exactly as his father had left it. Mahogany desk. Leather chairs. And behind a false panel James had discovered a second office. Hidden. Climate-controlled. Filled with secrets. Oh my God, Sarah whispered. The walls were covered in photographs. Dozens of them. All of the same woman at different ages. His mother's face, over and over, but the photos spanned decades, far more than his mother's lifetime. What is this? Jean moved closer, his stomach churning. James pointed to dates written on the backs. Sir, some of these photos are from the 1950s. Your mother was born in 1960. Sarah picked up a file. Her hands trembled as she read. Jean, this is a genealogy report. Your father was tracking a specific genetic lineage through multiple generations. He was looking for, oh God. What? Perfect genetic matches. He was trying to recreate a specific DNA profile. Your mother wasn't just your mother. She was selected. Chosen because her genetics matched a pattern he'd been searching for. Jin's world tilted. That's insane. There's more. James held up a thick folder marked Project Succession. Your father was part of a group. Wealthy Korean families attempting to preserve pure genetic lines. They arranged marriages, controlled breeding, falsified medical records to prevent contamination. This is eugenics, Sarah said, horrified. He was practicing eugenics. Jean ripped open the folder. Inside were profiles of dozens of families, genetic maps, arranged marriages spanning 3 generations. And at the center, his own family tree, meticulously planned. His marriage to Yuna hadn't been love. It had been an arrangement. And when her family's genetic flaws were discovered, his father had destroyed the engagement through the cruelest method possible, making Jean believe he was infertile. He wanted me to have no children rather than the wrong children, Jean said, the truth crushing him. Sarah grabbed another file. Went pale. Jean. Look at this. A photo of her. From 5 years ago, in Tokyo. Surveillance photos of them together. And beside it, her complete genetic profile. He knew about Tokyo, Sarah whispered. He had us followed. He knew I got pregnant. More documents spilled out. Orders to neutralize the situation. Bank transfers to private investigators. And then, a death certificate. Sarah Mills. Deceased. Car accident. 5 years ago, 3 months after Tokyo. This isn't real, Sarah said, shaking. I'm not dead. This is fake. He tried to kill you. Jin's voice was hollow. My father tried to have you killed to protect his genetic legacy. James pulled up more files on his tablet. The woman who looks like your mother, she's your aunt. Your father's sister. She was supposed to be the perfect genetic specimen, but she had a psychotic break 20 years ago. Your father had her institutionalized under a false identity. She's been in a private facility, until 3 days ago, when someone checked her out. Who? Jean demanded. The answer came not from James, but from the doorway. I did. Una stood there, flanked by 2 men in suits. Her expression was cold, determined. Your father asked me to continue his work if anything happened to him. To protect the legacy he'd built. Jean stepped in front of Sarah instinctively. You released a mentally unstable woman to threaten my children? To eliminate the contamination your moment of weakness created. Una moved into the room. Jean, your father spent 30 years building this. Ensuring genetic perfection. You were supposed to marry me, produce the next generation of optimized bloodlines. Instead, you threw it away for a one-night stand and 3 children with completely uncontrolled genetics. They're my children. They're mistakes. Una's composure cracked. Don't you understand? Your father's research, his connections, his life's work, it all depended on controlled genetic outcomes. Those children represent chaos. Random mixing. Everything he fought against. Sarah's voice cut through, sharp and fierce. They're human beings, you psychopath. Una's eyes flickered to her. You were supposed to die 5 years ago. The accident was arranged. Paid for. But you survived, disappeared, raised those genetic aberrations in hiding. Now you've surfaced and threatened everything. Jin's phone buzzed. His head of security. He answered on speaker. Sir, the children are gone. I'm sorry, we were breached. Professional team. They took all 3 children and left this. Jin's blood turned to ice. Left what? A note. It says, choose. Your company or the children. Acknowledge them publicly and Anteka's board will remove you tomorrow. Fight us, and the children disappear permanently. You have 2 hours to decide. Return to your father's plan, or lose everything. Sarah's scream tore through the room. Where are my babies? Una smiled. Cold. Triumphant. Safe. For now. This is your chance, Jean. Walk away. Deny paternity. Claim Sarah was a con artist. My associates will ensure the children are placed somewhere far away, with no memory of any of this. Antek stays yours. Your father's legacy continues. Everyone wins. Except my children, Jean said, his voice dangerous. Except 3 mistakes that should never have existed. Jean moved before thought engaged. His hand closed around Una's throat, slamming her against the wall. The men in suits reached for weapons, but James and security were faster. Where are they? Each word was ground glass. Eunice struggled, gasping. Kill me, and you'll never find them. Sarah pulled Jean back. Don't. She's not worth it. We'll find them ourselves. But how? Jen's mind raced. Professional kidnappers. 2-hour deadline. His entire empire on one side of the scale, his children on the other. Everything his father had built, demanding he choose legacy over love. Again. His phone rang. The distorted voice. Time is running out, Jean. What's more important? 3 children you've known for 2 days? Or everything you've built over a lifetime? Choose wisely. You can't say both. The line went dead. Jean looked at Sarah. Saw his own desperation reflected back. Their children were gone. His company was forfeit. And somewhere in Seoul, 3 4-year-olds were terrified and alone, pawns in a dead man's twisted game. He'd found his family only to lose them. And he had no idea how to get them back. Sarah's hands were shaking so violently she could barely hold her phone. We call the police. Right now. Kidnapping charges, everything. No. Jin's voice was steel. The moment we involve authorities, they'll move the children. We'll never find them. Then what? Sarah's control shattered. Jean, they have our babies. Ethan's terrified of the dark, Lucy needs her inhaler, Lily, her voice broke. We can't just stand here. Jean pulled her close, felt her trembling against him. We won't. I promise you, Sarah. We're getting them back. How? She pulled away, tears streaming. You heard them. We have 2 hours. No police. No resources. How do we? Lily, Jean said suddenly. You said she's perceptive. Observant. Yes, but. Jean pulled out his phone, hands moving rapidly. 3 months ago, I implemented a new safety protocol for all Antec executive families. Tracking chips in children's shoes. After a CEO's daughter was kidnapped in Singapore, I made it mandatory for, he stopped. Looked at Sarah. The shoes I sent over yesterday. For the children. Did they wear them? Sarah's eyes widened. The sneakers? Yes. All 3 of them, they loved the lights in. Jean was already pulling up the tracking application. If they're still wearing them, if whoever took them didn't think to check. 3 dots appeared on the map. Moving. Together. Heading south toward the industrial district. I've got them. Jin's heart thundered. James, mobilize every security team we have. Sarah, stay here where it's like hell. Sarah grabbed her jacket. Those are my children. I'm coming. Their eyes met. Jean saw the warrior who'd raised triplets alone. The woman who'd survived his father's assassination attempt. The mother who would burn the world down for her babies. Together, he said. Together, she agreed. The tracking led them to an abandoned pharmaceutical plant on Seoul's outskirts. Jin's security team surrounded the perimeter while he and Sarah approached the main entrance. This is a trap, James warned through the earpiece. They're expecting you. I don't care, Jean said. Inside, the building was dark, cavernous. Their footsteps echoed. Jean kept Sarah behind him, every instinct screaming danger. Then, a sound. Small. Frightened. Daddy? Lily's voice, coming from somewhere above them. Jin's heart exploded. Lily. Where are you? Second floor. But Daddy, it's a trap, the lady said. A figure emerged from the shadows. Jin's aunt, his mother's face twisted into something manic and wrong. She's a smart one, the woman said. Just like her grandmother. My sister would have loved her. Before your father locked me away for having defective genes. She laughed, the sound breaking. 30 years in that place. 30 years because I wasn't perfect enough for his plan. Where are the other children? Sarah demanded. Safe. For now. The aunt circled them. Your father destroyed my life, Jean. Took everything from me. Now you get to choose, save these children and lose your empire, or abandon them and continue his legacy. Poetic, don't you think? There's another option, Jean said quietly. I destroy everything my father built. The company, the legacy, all of it. And I start over. With my family. The aunt stopped. You'd give up billions? For them? Without hesitation. Jean looked at Sarah. I already lost 5 years being the man my father wanted me to be. I won't lose another minute. Sarah's breath caught. Pretty words, the aunt sneered. But you're your father's son. When it comes down to it, you'll choose power over. I choose them. Jean pulled out his phone. Opened a live stream to every major Korean news outlet. Held it up so his face was clearly visible. My name is Jean Anderton. 2 days ago, I discovered I have 3 children I didn't know existed. My father falsified medical records to prevent me from having a family. Now people connected to his legacy have kidnapped my children to force me to deny their existence. Jean, what are you doing? Sarah whispered. He kept talking to the camera, to Korea, to the world. I'm done with secrets. Done with protecting a legacy built on lies and genetic manipulation. My father was wrong. His collaborators are wrong. And I will burn every bridge, sacrifice every dollar, destroy everything I built to get my children back safely. The livestream viewer count exploded. Thousands. Tens of thousands. You're insane, the aunt breathed. I'm a father. Jean looked directly at her. You were a victim of my father's cruelty. I'm sorry for what he did to you. But my children are innocent. Let them go. Please. Something shifted in the woman's expression. Confusion. Pain. The madness flickering. My sister. She whispered. She wanted children so badly. But your father controlled everything. Even that. I know, Jean said gently. He controlled everything. Including me. But it ends now. Help me save them. Honor my mother's memory by protecting her grandchildren. The aunt's hands trembled. There, upstairs. 3rd door. I wasn't supposed to hurt them. Just scare you. Make you choose. Tears streamed down her face. I'm so tired of being angry. Sarah was already running for the stairs, Jean right behind her. They burst through the 3rd door to find all 3 children huddled together in a corner, Ethan's dragon clutched between them, Lucy's arms around her siblings. Mommy. Sarah collapsed to her knees, gathering all 3 into her arms, sobbing. Jean joined them, wrapping his arms around his entire family, feeling their hearts beat against his. Alive. Safe. His. I'm sorry, Lily whispered against his chest. I tried to leave clues. Tried to remember everything you said about being smart and brave. You were perfect, Jean said, his voice breaking. All of you. So perfect. Ethan looked up at him with enormous eyes. Are you still our daddy? Even though people say bad things? Jean cupped the boy's face. Especially because people say bad things. I'm your father. Nothing changes that. Not money, not companies, not anything. Drop a comment if you're crying right now. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe because the ending is going to be beautiful. Sarah looked at him over the children's heads. Jean, the live stream. You just destroyed your company's reputation. The board will fire me. Probably. Jean smiled, and it felt real, genuine, free. I don't care. I spent 6 years building an empire to fill a void. Now I have what actually matters. His phone buzzed. James. Sir, the live stream has gone viral. 10 million views and climbing. But you should see the responses. People are calling you a hero. The hashtag real legacy is trending. And sir, the board just issued a statement. They're standing behind you. Stock price is climbing. Gene stared at his phone in disbelief. People love an honest man, Sarah said softly. Maybe more than they love a perfect one. Their eyes held. In the chaos, the fear, the desperate race to save their children, something had solidified between them. Something that felt like hope. Like possibility. Like love. Jin's security team secured the aunt, gently, with instructions for psychiatric care rather than prosecution. Yuna was in custody, her co-conspirators being rounded up. The nightmare was ending. But as they walked out of that abandoned building, children safe in their arms, Gene knew this was really a beginning. He'd spent years being the son his father demanded. Now he'd become the father his children deserved. And maybe, just maybe, the man Sarah could love. The emergency board meeting convened at dawn. Gene walked into Anteka's boardroom with Sarah at his side and 3 children holding their hands. Unprecedented. Unprofessional. Absolutely intentional. The 12 board members stared. Some with disapproval. Others with barely concealed fascination. Chairman Thomas Shelby, the most traditional, the most likely to demand Jin's resignation, spoke first. Mr. Anderton. This is highly irregular. So is kidnapping, Gene replied calmly. So is a eugenics conspiracy spanning 3 generations. So is discovering your entire life was built on lies. I'm redefining what regular means. He pulled out a chair for Sarah, then lifted each child into seats beside her. Ethan clutched his dragon. Lucy sat up straight, determined. Lily watched everyone with those knowing eyes. These are my children, Gene said to the room. Lucy, Ethan, and Lily. 24 hours ago, I didn't know they existed. Now they're the most important thing in my life. More important than this company. More important than stock prices or quarterly reports or any legacy my father tried to force on me. Gene, Thomas began, we understand the emotional component, but... Do you? Gene pulled out his tablet, connected it to the room's main screen. Because I'm about to show you exactly what my father's legacy really was. The files appeared. Project Succession. The eugenics program. The arranged marriages. The falsified medical records. Decades of genetic manipulation involving some of Korea's wealthiest families. Including 3 board members sitting at this table. The room went silent. My father didn't build Antec alone, Gene continued. He had partners. Collaborators who shared his vision of genetic perfection. Who arranged marriages for their own children. Who falsified records to prevent contamination. Who profited from a pharmaceutical company that provided the drugs used to institutionalize people deemed genetically defective. Gene pulled up financial records. Antec has been funneling money to that pharmaceutical company for 15 years. Money I never approved. Money that 3 of you authorized through subsidiary accounts. Board members shifted uncomfortably. Thomas's face had gone pale. Mr. Shelby, Gene said quietly. Your daughter's engagement last year. Arranged marriage to the Choi family. Was that love? Or genetics? Thomas couldn't meet his eyes. I'm not judging, Gene said. I was a victim of the same system. But it ends now. Today. I'm proposing a complete restructuring of Anteka's board and financial oversight. Anyone involved in my father's program can resign quietly, or I release everything to the authorities. Your choice. You'd destroy the company, one board member protested. No. I'd save it. Gene looked at his children. My father built Antec on control, secrecy, and manipulation. I'm rebuilding it on transparency. On actual merit instead of genetic profiles. On being a company people can trust. Sarah spoke up, her voice steady. The livestream from last night has 40 million views globally. The response has been overwhelmingly positive. People are calling Jean a hero for choosing family over corporate image. Anteca's stock is up 18% since market open. Because people respect honesty, Jean added. They respect a CEO who admits mistakes, who protects his family, who stands up to corruption. That's the legacy I'm building. Lily tugged his sleeve. Daddy, that man looks sad. She pointed at Thomas. Jean knelt beside her. Sometimes people are sad because they made choices they regret. Can he make better choices now? Lily asked. Out of the mouths of children. Jean looked at Thomas. Can you? The old man's composure cracked. Your father, he convinced us it was for the greater good. Preserving excellence. Ensuring the best outcomes for our children. His voice broke. But my daughter is miserable in her marriage. And I did that to her. For genetics. For a theory. It's not too late, Jean said. Help me dismantle this. Make it right. Thomas nodded slowly. Then pulled out his phone. Made a call. Prosecutor's office? I have information about a long-running conspiracy involving corporate fraud and medical malpractice. One by one, the other complicit board members followed suit. Jean watched his father's empire of secrets collapse with a single choice, truth over lies. By afternoon, authorities had arrested 14 people connected to the eugenics program. Una was charged with kidnapping, conspiracy, and attempted murder. The pharmaceutical company was raided, its records seized. And Jin's aunt, his mother's sister, was transferred to a real psychiatric facility where she could finally receive proper care instead of imprisonment. Jean stood in his office, watching the news coverage, Sarah beside him. You did it, she said softly. You actually burned it all down. Not all of it. Jean turned to face her. Antec will survive. Better than before. But the toxic parts? My father's vision? Gone. What about Una? Sarah asked. During the arrest, she was screaming about how you'd regret choosing us over her. I don't. Jean stepped closer. Sarah, I've regretted exactly one thing in the last 5 years. Walking away from you in Tokyo. Everything else, the company, the success, the perfect image, it was all empty. You and those children gave me back something I didn't know I'd lost. What? Myself. His hand cupped her face. The man I actually wanted to be, instead of the one my father demanded. Sarah's eyes glistened. Jean, we've known each other for a total of maybe 72 hours across 5 years. This is crazy. I know. He smiled. You told me once that sharing whiskey could lead to sharing truths. I'm all in on truth now. Here's mine, I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I started 5 years ago and never stopped. Maybe it's happening right now. But it's real. The kids deserve a father who's brave enough to be honest. Jin's thumb brushed her cheek. I don't expect you to feel the same way. I know I have to earn your trust. But I'm asking for the chance. For real this time. No running. No hiding. Just us. A family. If you'll have me. Sarah's hand covered his. You really destroyed your father's entire legacy for us. Best decision I've ever made. She kissed him. It was soft, tentative, full of 5 years of what-ifs and might-have-beens. Then deeper, more certain, tasting like hope and new beginnings. When they broke apart, 3 children stood in the doorway, grinning. Finally. Lucy declared. We were wondering when you two would figure it out. You're 4, Jean laughed. And smart, Lily added. You look at mommy the way daddy looks at mommy in my drawings. Jean blinked. You drew us? Lily held up a sketch, him and Sarah, holding hands, with 3 children between them. She'd drawn it days ago, before any of this resolution. I knew, Lily said simply. I always knew you'd be our family. Ethan ran forward, dragon and all, wrapping his arms around Jin's legs. Can we stay in Seoul? I like it here. And you're here. Jin looked at Sarah. The question hung between them. I can work from anywhere, Sarah said carefully. The kids would need schools, stability, but... Jin prompted. But home is where you are. She smiled, tears in her eyes. All of you. So yes. We'll stay. The children erupted in cheers. Jin pulled them all close, Sarah, Lucy, Ethan, Lily, his family, impossible and perfect and real. His phone buzzed one final time. A message from the genetics specialist, Dr. Park. Final test results confirm, you were never infertile. Your father's deception was complete. But Mr. Anderton, those 3 children are miracles regardless. Triplets from a single encounter have odds of approximately 1 in 200,000. You didn't just get your fertility back. You got lightning in a bottle. Congratulations on your beautiful family. Jin showed Sarah the message. She laughed through tears. 1 in 200,000. We really won the impossible lottery. No, Jin said, kissing her forehead, then each of his children's heads. I did. The moment you walked into my office with 3 miracles and a DNA report. Outside his office windows, Seoul sparkled in the afternoon sun. The city where his father had built an empire of lies. And where Jin would build something better, a life of truth, love, and second chances. Comment if you're feeling all the emotions right now. One more part to go. Subscribe so you don't miss the beautiful conclusion. 6 months later. The traditional Korean wedding ceremony was small, intimate, nothing like the massive spectacle Jin's father would have demanded. Just close friends, reformed board members who'd become genuine allies, and 3 flower children who took their jobs very seriously. Well, mostly seriously. Ethan's dragon was also a ring bearer, which caused some confusion but infinite delight. Jin stood at the altar in traditional hanbok, watching Sarah walk toward him in a gown that blended Western elegance with Korean embroidery. She was breathtaking. But what made his heart stop was the expression on her face, pure joy, untainted by doubt or fear. They'd earned this moment. Through investigations and therapy sessions for his aunt, through restructuring Antec into a company he was proud of, through late nights talking and early mornings with children who had endless energy. Through choosing each other, every single day, even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. You look terrified, Sarah whispered as she reached him. Terrified I'll wake up and this will be a dream, Jin admitted. It's real. She squeezed his hands. We're real. The ceremony was beautiful. Traditional vows mixed with personal promises. Jin pledged to be the father his children deserved and the partner Sarah could trust. Sarah vowed to build a future together that honored truth over perfection. When they were pronounced married, 3 small voices shouted finally, loud enough to make the officiant laugh. The reception was held at a restored hanok, traditional Korean house, that Jin had purchased specifically for their growing family. No sterile penthouse. No family estate filled with ghosts. Something new. Something theirs. Thomas Shelby approached during dinner, his own daughter beside him, recently divorced from her arranged marriage and genuinely smiling for the first time in years. Jin, I wanted to thank you, Thomas said. For having the courage I lacked. My daughter is enrolling in medical school next month. Something she always wanted but I discouraged because it didn't fit the plan. I'm glad, Jin said sincerely. We all deserve the chance to choose our own paths. Your father would be appalled by what you've done, Thomas added. Then smiled. Which means you did exactly right. As the sun set, Jin found Sarah on the garden terrace, watching their children play with other guests' kids. Lucy was organizing some elaborate game. Ethan was narrating an adventure involving dragons. Lily was sketching the whole scene, capturing joy in pencil strokes. Happy? Gene slipped his arms around his wife, from behind. Deliriously. Sarah leaned into him. 6 months ago, I was terrified you'd reject us. Or that we'd never escape your father's shadow. 6 months ago, I thought I was broken beyond repair. Gene kissed her temple. You gave me back everything I thought I'd lost. Purpose. Family. Hope. We gave each other a second chance, Sarah corrected. That's the real gift. Dr. Park approached with a glass of champagne and a knowing smile. Beautiful ceremony. And I have a wedding gift of sorts, final medical clearance for all 3 children. The genetic markers we were monitoring have stabilized. They're perfectly healthy. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. All of them? Even Ethan's blood condition? Resolved. Whatever combination of genetics created those 3, it's extraordinary. They're going to be just fine. After the doctor left, Sarah turned in Jin's arms. Do you ever wonder what your mother would think? About all of this? Jean looked at Lily, who glanced up at that exact moment and smiled, his mother's smile, full of love and understanding. I think she knows, he said quietly. And I think she's happy we chose love over legacy. Later, as guests departed and children were tucked into their new bedrooms, Ethan insisting his dragon needed its own pillow, Lucy requesting a nightlight shaped like a microscope, Lily hanging her sketches on walls she'd already claimed as her art studio, Jean and Sarah finally had a moment alone. They stood in their bedroom, this new space that held no ghosts, no expectations, just possibility. I have something for you, Jean said, pulling out a small box. I know we already did rings, but... Inside was a necklace, 3 small pendants, each engraved with a child's name and birth date. The dates I should have been there, Jean said softly. I can't go back and fix my absence. But I can honor them going forward. You carried them, birthed them, raised them alone. This is my promise that you'll never be alone again. Sarah's tears fell freely. Jean. I know I'm not perfect. I know I'll make mistakes. But I'm here. Completely. For all of you. For as long as you'll have me. Forever, Sarah whispered, clasping the necklace around her neck. I'm thinking forever. She kissed him, and it tasted like promises kept and futures built and love that had survived impossible odds. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah laughed. So. We went from one weekend 5 years ago to married with 3 kids. That's quite a story. The best story. Jean grinned. Though I'm slightly terrified about what comes next. 3 kids entering school. Teenage years. Dating. College. One impossible day at a time, Sarah quoted his own words back to him. We've survived eugenics conspiracies and kidnappings. We can handle parent-teacher conferences. Can we though? They both laughed, falling onto the bed together, exhausted and happy and home. 1 year later. Anteca's annual shareholder meeting looked nothing like it had under Jin's father's leadership. The boardroom was diverse, different ages, backgrounds, genders. Decisions were made transparently. Profits were strong, but so was the company's ethical reputation. Jean stood before shareholders and presented not just financial reports, but impact statements. Antec had funded 3 medical research initiatives investigating genetic conditions, real research, not eugenics. They'd created a foundation to support victims of medical fraud. They'd become a company that valued people over perfection. In conclusion, Jean said, this year proved that doing the right thing and running a successful business aren't mutually exclusive. Thank you for your continued trust. The applause was genuine. Warm. Afterward, in his office, Jean found a drawing on his desk. Lily's work, their family, holding hands, standing in front of the hammock. Above them, she'd written in careful letters, our real legacy. Jean pinned it on the wall beside his degrees and awards. It was worth more than all of them combined. His phone buzzed. Sarah, Lucy's science fair is in an hour. Ethan insists you need to see his volcano. Lily made a sculpture of DNA strands out of clay and wants your opinion. Also, I love you. Don't be late. Gene smiled, packed his briefcase, and headed for the door. His assistant looked up in surprise. Sir, you have the investor call at 4. Reschedule it. I have a science fair. But they flew in from Singapore specifically. Then they'll understand that my daughter's volcano demonstration takes priority. Gene paused at the door. My father built an empire but missed everything that mattered. I'm not making that mistake. He made it to the school with 5 minutes to spare. Found his family in the gymnasium surrounded by poster boards and experiments. Ethan's volcano was impressively large and only slightly unstable. Lucy's report on genetic disorders was sophisticated enough to make Jin's chest swell with pride. Lily's DNA sculpture was hauntingly beautiful. Daddy! All three of them rushed him, and Gene caught them in a hug that felt like victory. Like redemption. Like everything he'd been searching for without knowing it. Sarah joined them, and they stood together as a family, messy, imperfect, real. Thank you, Gene whispered to her over the children's heads. For what? For not giving up. For showing up at my office with DNA reports and courage. For giving me a second chance at the life I thought was impossible. Sarah's eyes shimmered. Thank you for choosing us. Every single day. Always, Gene promised. For the rest of my life. Always. As Ethan's volcano erupted, perhaps too enthusiastically, causing minor chaos and maximum delight, Gene thought about legacy. His father had obsessed over genetic perfection, control, predetermined outcomes. But real legacy wasn't about DNA or corporate empires. It was this: 3 children laughing without fear. A partner who trusted him completely. A life built on truth instead of lies. Love chosen freely instead of arranged strategically. It was imperfect and chaotic and absolutely perfect. Gene Anderton had been told he was broken. Infertile. Incapable of creating life or legacy. Now he stood in an elementary school gymnasium, covered in baking soda volcano residue, surrounded by his wife and children, and knew the truth. He wasn't broken. He'd just been waiting for the right miracle. And she'd walked into his office 6 months ago with 3 more miracles and changed everything. The end. Thank you so much for reading this journey with me. If this story touched your heart, please leave a comment below telling me your favorite moment. What part made you cry? What part made you cheer? And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. I have so many more incredible stories coming your way. Remember, sometimes the life we think we want isn't the one we actually need. Sometimes the greatest legacy is simply choosing love over fear. And sometimes, the impossible becomes possible when we're brave enough to let it. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. And tell me, do you want to see more stories like this? Let me know. Until next time, beautiful people. Choose love. Choose truth. Choose your own legacy. Red Heart.